Well, welcome to this episode of Turbocharging Teams, the series where we try to provide you with tips and tricks to get more out of Microsoft Teams, whether you're an end user, a power user, or an IT pro. Now, in the first episode, we talked about setting up teams and channels. And the second episode, we talked about all the different ways of messaging and posts. In this episode, we're really going to talk about a topic which is near and dear to my heart, which is analytics, because through analytics, you can really figure out if all these teams and channels are getting used. So analytics really is a great compass, or maybe it's a yardstick to help you measure and understand what is working and what is not. My name is still Kevin Keiller, and as usual, I'm joined by my colleague Dino Caputo. Dino, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I mean, Office in general and Teams more specifically makes a lot of important analytics available to users, and even more analytics to the IT pros behind the scenes and all the admins doing, taking care of the tenant. So today we're going to look at and talk about the analytics that are available to both team members and to team owners as well, like what types of information they can look at.
Yeah, and indeed, when we help organizations leverage the analytic information that's built into Office and Teams, um, we typically look at five broad categories. So there's usage and adoption, quality, reliability, user satisfaction, and then as well some licensing and financial data. There's really, broadly these analytics fall into two types. There's behavioral analytics, which is really based on what people actually do. And then there's sentiment analysis. This is based on, what people tell you. So things like, survey data and things like user satisfaction. Now, directly from in Teams, which we're going to focus on today, most of the analytics focus on usage and adoption. So Dino, I think maybe we should first start by describing the important difference between usage and adoption.
Yeah, so usage is going to be the quantity of something, like, for example, like the number of messages posted or the number of meeting minutes or the number of calls that were made. So the totals. In contrast, adoption is about the who is using a particular function or capability. So is Kevin making phone calls? Is Dino posting messages? The thing about usage is you can have a high number of calls, but it's only when you look at the adoption, the actual people, that you understand if one person is making a lot of calls or if everybody is using the feature. So in many cases, looking at groups where adoption is low might point you to the areas where more training is needed, for example, or where specific configurations are not meeting the business needs.
Yeah, no, and so there's really two sources of Teams analytics that we mentioned. There's this analytics tab that will show you at the team and channel level, and that's available so directly from within Teams. And then additionally, if you are an IT pro and then you have report reader or admin capabilities, you can go to the Office 365 Admin Center or the Teams Admin Center, and then there's even some other places called Quality Dashboard. But we'll talk about that in the subsequent episode. So this is really about analytics for all. These are available, as we've said, to the team owners and team members. So if you go to a team, you can choose manage team from the ... the ellipsis, the three dots, and you see a tab that's labeled analytics. So selecting that will bring up a screen that looks something like this. And, Dino, why don't you start describing, some of the useful information that's available on this Teams analytics screen?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So I like this dashboard. It's nice. You can see the overall team's analytics, like kind of the bird's eye view of what's happening. So you get things like the total number of users in the team, how many apps have been deployed, how many meetings have taken place within this team, how many posts, how many replies to those posts, how many people used or how many mentions there were in the team, the number of reactions. So it's like if I liked a message or I had a sad face. And then also, very important is the number of inactive users. And this again leads to us to make some important decisions, or helps us make important decisions. And you can do this today by filtering over 7, 30, and 90 days.
Yeah, no, so that's great. And I think, you pointed out like inactive users. That's obviously, looking at it from the adoption perspective, right? So like if maybe people are new to the organization or new to teams, if there's, you often want to have, full participation. And if you see that the inactive users are high, you may want to just circle back, especially if your organization has just started using Teams. Maybe people are putting information in a different place. Same thing in terms of that what Microsoft, that whole engagement section, as you pointed out, the posts, the replies, the mentions, the reactions, if you're not getting that broad-based, that, kind of engagement, that might be that either people aren't aware of this team, or, they need some further their training. They need to watch, I don't know, episode 2, where they can learn how to do all of those things, right? So, yeah, no, that's some good stuff. In terms of then, there's some more detailed graphs and what have you, like that engagement graph. And I think you can toggle certain things if you just want to look at over time, specific elements, right, Dino? Can you just talk us through that?
Sure, like you can, when we're talking about channel sort of analytics and Teams analytics, you can toggle your view based on posts or replies, mentions, and even reactions, which is kind of neat. So really getting a nice granular view of what's happening. So, sometimes people may not want to post, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're not engaged in a channel conversation. So they may, you can tell their level of engagement by the number of reactions. So I think that's super important to be able to look at. So at least you can gauge, Kevin may not be posting anything, but it looks like he's read all these messages because he's reacted to almost every single post. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, and it's not exactly clear, so that's why I wanted to bring it up. Like, it's like you click on the legend, the things below the graph, to toggle them on or off, and that may not be clear. And as we talked about in episode 1, like reactions or replies are especially important in, like, let's say, a moderated channel, because you're
Because you
posting
can't
things.
post.
Yeah, you're hoping for maybe a reaction to it, right? And if you're not getting it, then maybe it's because nobody's reading it. So um, now, similarly, like you were talking about, that's at the Teams level. So if you go and you, either from an individual channel, you can pick Manage Channel, and then you also have an Analytics tab, and you see similar information. But one of the things that I like to do is, from inside Manage Team, you can click on Channels, and then you get a list of all the channels. And there's a field on the right here that says Last Activity Date. And once again, it may not be clear, but if you click on those headings, you can sort by ascending or descending date order. So by doing that, if you have a whole bunch of channels inside a team, and you sort it, you can see channels that have been inactive for a really long time. And sometimes you get this kind of team and channel sprawl. So if you see teams and or channels that are inactive for a really long time, either people don't know they exist, or maybe they've outlived their usefulness. And I think that was that key on that graph that we were talking about, is to really to looking for trends, right? So as things, if they're trending up, that's good. If you're getting no replies and no engagement, is trending down, it might be a time to think about archiving the channel, or maybe even doing some app mentions or something, so that people realize that that exists. So, analytics is power, and unfortunately, I think we found that many organizations don't take the time to understand what's available, to even look at any of this analytics, or to take the time to start looking at and interpreting the results. Some people and some organizations think that you have to buy some additional third party tools, and that's not true. Microsoft has made a lot of great analytics available directly out of the box. um, Three key tips. So I'd say use what you have. More tools is not always better. First, let's start with the tools that you have. What you really need is someone that takes the time and knows how to interpret it. You want to always look for differences between groups, and then ask yourself why. So if one channel's getting you know, great engagement. Okay, well, why? Do I understand what is driving the difference? Is the difference expected? And then look for trends. So if something's changing, do I understand why this is changing? If I tried to get more people using Teams, am I seeing more posts, more replies, more engagements? Is the trend good or bad? And if I'm not sure why something's changing, a lot of times you need to start asking more questions. We often do something we call an analytics checkup, which as a starting point just helps an organization expose some of the great information that they already have at their fingertips. And it's really always exciting and interesting to see how insightful and beneficial they find the analytics that is available in Teams.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Indeed, Kevin. So that's all the time we have for this episode. But in the next episode of Turbocharging Teams, we're going to dive into even more details about analytics related to usage and adoption, but also some additional analytics around quality, reliability, and user satisfaction that are available specifically to Teams administrators. So that's it for this episode. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.